The ship was silent. Too silent. The human doctor walked slowly down the long metal corridor. His boots echoed on the cold floor, each step louder than the last. Lights flickered above him, weak and broken, as if the ship itself was alive and tired of breathing. Dust floated in the air, catching small beams of blue light from overhead panels. The silence was heavy, pressing against his chest, making him feel like he was not welcome here. He had been called to this place without warning. The message was short: emergency, one life form in need, medical assistance required. That was all, nothing else. No name, no details, no explanation. As he walked, he felt something strange. The corridors were not empty. They felt alive. Every door he passed hummed faintly. Every shadow seemed to move just a little when he turned his head. He told himself, it was just nerves. Space stations always had their own sounds. But deep inside, he knew something was different here. Finally, he reached the end of the corridor. The door before him hissed open. The room beyond was darker than the hallway, filled with wires, glowing monitors, and the faint smell of burned metal. His heart beat faster. Then he saw her. She sat in the center of the room, strapped into a strange chair made of silver metal and glowing cables. Her body looked fragile, her skin glowing a soft blue light that shimmered in the darkness. Strange patterns ran across her arms and neck, like veins of light pulsing slowly. Her head tilted forward, her eyes closed, her breathing weak. For a long moment, the doctor could not move. She was not human, that much was clear. Her face was beautiful, but different: slender features, smooth skin without blemish, and eyes shaped like stars when they flickered open. But what struck him most was not her alien beauty. It was the pain written across her face. She was hurt, broken. The doctor stepped closer, slowly, carefully. He expected someone else to be here, a caretaker, a guard, anyone. But the room was empty, no sound except her shallow breathing and the quiet hum of the machines. Connected to her chair, he whispered to himself, "Who left you here?" As if she heard, her eyes opened. Two brilliant pools of glowing blue stared at him. For a second, he froze. Fear ran through him, but also something else: sadness. Her gaze was not cold. It was not threatening. It was pleading. The girl tried to move, but her body resisted. Her arms shook. Her fingers curled weakly. The doctor saw wires connected to her chest and legs, as if the chair itself was keeping her alive. She opened her mouth, trying to speak. The sound that came out was not clear words, but soft broken tones, almost like music. He could not understand her language, but he understood the meaning. She was asking for help. The doctor swallowed hard. His training had never prepared him for this. He had studied human bodies, not alien ones. He knew bones, muscles, blood, and nerves, but this was something else. He looked at her again and saw more than just injury. He saw despair. Someone had left her here, abandoned her. Why? The question burned in his mind. What kind of people would leave one of their own like this? What had she done to deserve such cruelty? The doctor felt anger rising inside him, but also fear. If they had left her, maybe they did not want her to be found. The girl's breathing grew weaker. Her eyes fluttered, struggling to stay open. The doctor moved quickly now, his fear replaced with instinct. He checked the chair, the wires, the glowing symbols flashing on the screen beside her. Most of it made no sense to him, but he saw enough to know one thing: her life was slipping away. He leaned closer. "Stay with me, don't give up." Her eyes focused on him again, shining brighter. For a moment, there was trust there, a fragile thread of connection between two beings from different worlds. The doctor felt it. In that instant, he knew he could not walk away. He could not leave her here to die. He had no idea who she was, why she was here, or what danger might follow if he chose to help. But none of that mattered now that she was alive. She was suffering, and he was the only one who had answered the call. The silence of the ship grew heavier, wrapping around them both. Somewhere in the shadows, machines clicked and hummed as if watching. The air felt colder, darker, filled with secrets he did not yet understand. But he made his choice. The doctor placed his hand gently on her arm. Her skin was warm, glowing faintly under his touch. She flinched at first, then relaxed. her breathing slowing. A soft sound escaped her lips. Not words, but something that felt like relief. He whispered again, "You're not alone anymore." The ship creaked, metal groaning as if alive, as if warning him. He ignored it. His focus was on her. This was the beginning. The mystery was only just starting, and he already knew nothing would ever be the same again. The doctor's hand trembled as it rested on her arm. Her skin was unlike anything he had ever touched before, smooth, almost like glass, but alive, pulsing faintly with light beneath the surface. For a moment he thought she might slip away. Again, her eyes closing, her breathing slowing. But then, with great effort, she looked up at him. Those glowing blue eyes widened slightly, as if surprised that someone was still here. He whispered softly, "It's all right. You're safe now." The words were meaningless to her. He knew. She would not understand his language, but tone carried more than words ever could. His voice was calm, careful, steady. The girl tried to speak. Her lips parted. A soft sound escaped, a mix of broken syllables and low musical notes. The language was foreign, beautiful in its own strange way, but fractured. She stopped suddenly, her throat tightening as though the effort caused pain. "Don't strain yourself," he murmured, placing his hand gently near her shoulder, trying to reassure her. Her head tilted, just slightly, as if she was trying to understand him. Her eyes flickered over his face, scanning every detail, the lines of his expression, the way his mouth moved, the worry in his eyes. She could not understand his words, but she seemed to understand him. For a few seconds, the silence stretched. Between them, it wasn't empty silence, it was heavy, full of meaning neither of them could put into words. The doctor's mind raced. He had no tools for this. His medical kit was designed for humans, not for someone like her. Her body was a mystery. The patterns glowing under her skin pulsed in ways he could not explain, and the wires connected to her chair looked more like a prison than life support. Still, he had to try. He crouched beside the chair, examining the base of the device. Strange symbols ran across its surface, glowing faintly. He touched one. Immediately, the machine responded with a low hum, and the alien girl flinched, her body jerking slightly. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, pulling his hand away. Her breathing grew rapid, her eyes wide with sudden fear. He raised both his hands in the air, showing he meant no harm. No, it's okay. I won't hurt you." His voice dropped lower, softer, like a lullaby. Slowly, her panic eased. She studied him again, carefully, as though deciding whether to trust him. Then, with great effort, she raised her hand. It trembled violently, weak and fragile, but she moved it towards him. He froze. Her fingers stretched, glowing faintly. For a moment, he thought she was asking for help, or maybe giving him permission. He placed his hand beneath hers, letting her fragile fingers rest against his palm. She was cold, but alive. He could feel her pulse faintly, like a spark of light struggling not to fade. Something passed between them in that touch, not words, not thoughts, but understanding. She needed him. The doctor swallowed hard. He had walked into this place blind, answering a call he didn't fully understand. Now, staring into the desperate eyes of this alien girl, he knew leaving was no longer an option. He spoke slowly, almost to himself. "All right, we'll figure this out together." The alien girl blinked once, her gaze softening. Her hand slipped back down, too weak to hold itself up any longer. The doctor gently guided it back to her lap, then turned his attention once more to the chair. He studied the wires. They connected to her spine, her chest, her legs. Some of them pulsed with faint blue light, while others flickered irregularly, as if broken. He touched one carefully. It was warm, buzzing with energy. He realized these wires weren't just keeping her alive, they were draining her. His heart pounded. She wasn't simply disabled. She was being held down, trapped. Someone had done this to her on purpose. The thought made his stomach twist with anger. Who could do something so cruel? He looked back at her. She was watching him closely. Her eyes filled with something he recognized instantly, fear mixed with hope. She was waiting for him to act. He nodded slowly, as though making a promise to her without words. "I'll help you." The ship groaned suddenly, a deep sound that echoed through the walls. The lights above flickered again, throwing the room into darkness for a brief second. The doctor looked around sharply, but there was no one else. Just him, just her still. He couldn't shake the feeling that the ship itself was listening. He leaned closer to the girl. "We don't have much time." Her breathing quickened, but she didn't look away. The doctor pulled out his scanner from his medical kit. It was primitive compared to the alien technology, but it was all he had. He ran it over her chest, her neck, her arms. The device beeped strangely, struggling to process what it was detecting. Still, he caught the important part. Her vitals were fading. He clenched his jaw. He had to act soon. The girl made another sound, soft and broken, almost like a word. Her eyes locked on his, glowing faintly in the dim light. The tone was fragile, but it carried meaning, a plea. He placed his hand over hers again, squeezing. "Gently, I hear you," he whispered. "I won't let you go." For the first time, she let out a small breath that almost sounded like relief. The silence returned, wrapping around them like a fragile bubble. The doctor could feel at the beginning of something much larger than himself. He had stepped into a mystery he did not yet understand, but one thing was clear: she trusted him. And that trust was something he could not betray. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew he would not leave her. Not now, not ever. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls had shifted closer. The doctor's breath came heavier, his mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, none of them giving clear answers. He had spent years training to heal human bodies, yet here he was alone, staring at a fragile alien girl whose life hung on threads of glowing wires. Her eyes stayed locked on him. Every time his attention drifted to the machine, he felt her gaze pulling him back, as if reminding him she was more than just a patient. She was alive, aware, and terrified. He had two choices. He could walk away, pretend this was too much for him, too dangerous, too impossible, or he could take the risk, try to help her despite not knowing what might happen. His chest tightened. Walking away would mean her death. He knew it. That chair wasn't keeping her alive, it was keeping her trapped. The steady hum of its circuits sounded less like support and more like chains rattling in the dark. The doctor clenched his fists. "I won't leave you," he said quietly. The alien girl blinked slowly, her expression softening, as though she had heard the promise in his tone. He bent lower, inspecting the wires again. Some were buried deep under her skin, others wrapped tightly around her arms and chest, glowing faintly with each weak heartbeat. Removing them might kill her, but leaving them would certainly finish the job. He touched the edge of one connection. Carefully, the girl winced, her body tensing in pain. He pulled back immediately. Her breathing grew rapid, fear flashing in her glowing eyes. "It's all right," he whispered, raising a calming hand. "I won't hurt you." The tension in her body eased just slightly. He realized then how fragile her trust was, thin as glass, but still strong enough to hold. She was watching every move he made, deciding with each moment whether to keep believing in him. He couldn't fail her. Taking a deep breath, he reached into his medical kit. His tools looked clumsy against the advanced alien chair, but they were all he had: a laser scalpel, a field injector, a scanner that beeped uneasily when pointed at her chest. Nothing was made for her kind. Still, he set them carefully on the floor, trying not to let his fear show. The ship groaned again, a deep metallic sigh that echoed down the corridor outside. The doctor paused, glancing at the door. The sound faded, but it left a warning in the air, as though something unseen had just taken notice. He shook it off and turned back to her. Her hand twitched suddenly, reaching weakly toward him again. He leaned forward, letting her fingers touch his arm. The contact was soft, trembling, but it steadied him. She trusted him enough to reach out. That was all he needed. "I'll do everything I can," he promised. He studied the base of the chair again, his eyes darting across its strange design. Symbols glowed faintly, pulsing like veins. He pressed one carefully. The machine responded with a low hum, and one of the wires loosened slightly around her arm. She gasped, her eyes widening. For a terrifying moment, her vitals spiked. The scanner beeped frantically. He panicked, pressing his hand gently to her shoulder. "Stay with me. Breathe." Her gaze locked on his again. Slowly, her breathing steadied. He exhaled with relief. Good, good. We're okay. The loosened wire pulsed faintly, no longer draining her strength as aggressively. He realized then what he had to do. He had to disable the chair. Wire by wire while keeping her alive through every step. The task felt impossible. But he had no other choice. He pressed another symbol, this time. A wire at her side flickered weakly, then shut down. Her body sagged, and he quickly reached out, steadying her before she could collapse. Her lips parted, a sound escaping soft, almost like a word. He didn't understand it, but the tone was clear. Gratitude, relief. The doctor swallowed hard, his throat dry. You're welcome, he said softly. One by one, he continued. Each step was dangerous. Every wire he disconnected sent her body through shocks of pain and weakness. But with every risk, he saw her eyes grow a little clearer, her breathing a little stronger. The chains that had bound her were slowly breaking, and yet, with every success, a new fear grew in him. Whoever had left her here, whoever had trapped her in this cruel device, would not be happy to find her free. The thought made him glance again at the door. Shadows shifted in the corridor, though no one was there. The ship creaked louder as, if restless still, he pressed on. At last, the final wire disconnected with a faint hiss. The chair dimmed, its glow fading until only silence remained. The alien girl slumped forward, her body free for the first time. He caught her carefully, his arms wrapping around her fragile frame. Her skin was cold, but her pulse was there stronger. Now than before, she leaned against him, her eyes half open, watching him closely. The doctor looked down at her, his heart pounding. He had done it. She was free. And in that moment, something shifted between them. It wasn't just doctor and patient anymore. It was something deeper, something he couldn't name yet, but could feel burning quietly in his chest. Her lips moved again, forming sounds he couldn't understand. But her eyes said enough. Trust, hope, and something else, unspoken but undeniable. The doctor held her tighter. You're safe now, he whispered. But even as he said it, the ship groaned once more, louder than before. The walls seemed to tremble, warning them both that safety was an illusion. Still, he would not let her go. Not now. Not ever. The hum of the chair had stopped, but the silence that followed was even heavier. The doctor held the alien girl in his arms, listening to the faint rhythm of her breathing. Her body was weak, trembling slightly, but there was life there, life that had almost been stolen. He set her gently against the wall, making sure she could rest without falling. Her glowing eyes stayed fixed on him, watching, studying, as though she wanted to memorize every movement. He tried to smile at her, a soft reassurance, though deep down his nerves were screaming. The ship creaked again, louder this time. The walls groaned, vibrating faintly beneath his feet. It was no longer the tired sound of old metal. It was alive, warning him. He looked back at the chair. The cables lay loose, dim and lifeless. Whoever had designed it had not meant for her to escape. His stomach tightened with unease. By freeing her, he had crossed a line. The girl shifted slightly, making a soft sound. It was not a word he understood, but he caught the tone. Fear. Her gaze flicked toward the shadows in the corners of the room. She knew something he didn't. The doctor crouched beside her. What is it? What are you afraid of? His voice was calm, but his own fear was rising. She raised a weak hand, pointing toward the door. The gesture was small, shaky, but clear enough. He followed her gaze. The corridor outside was dark, only the faint flicker of lights breaking the black. For a moment, nothing moved. Then he thought he saw its shadows shifting unnaturally, shapes bending against the light. His breath caught. They weren't alone. The doctor's pulse hammered in his ears. He didn't know what was out there, but every instinct told him it wasn't friendly. He reached for his medical kit, clutching it tightly as though it were a weapon. Even though he knew it wasn't, his training had taught him to save lives, not to fight. The girl made another sound, louder this time, urgent. Her eyes locked onto his, pleading. He understood without needing words. They had to leave. Now. He slipped one arm under her legs and the other behind her back, lifting her gently. She was light, almost too light, as though the chair had drained more than her strength. She gasped, softly, but she did not resist. Instead, she clung weakly to his suit. Her head resting against his shoulder, the doctor stepped toward the door. His heart pounded with every step, the sound of his boots echoing loudly in the silence. He half expected something to leap from the shadows, to tear them both apart. The corridor stretched ahead, long and empty, but the flickering lights made the shadows dance. The ship groaned again, the sound vibrating through the floor, making his teeth clench. He moved quickly, but carefully, holding her close. Every corner felt like a trap. Every sound made him tense. The alien girl stirred against him, her glowing eyes scanning the darkness, her body shivering slightly. Then, faintly, the sound came. A whisper, not words, not language, just noise, low, drawn out, echoing down the hall like breath on the back of his neck. He froze. His grip on her tightened. The whisper grew louder, closer, surrounding them. "Keep going," he muttered to himself, forcing his legs to move. The girl made another sound, almost like agreement. Her gaze stayed fixed on the darkness ahead, as though she could see something he couldn't. The corridor opened into another chamber, larger and dimly lit by strange glowing panels. The walls here were smoother, cleaner, almost new compared to the rest of the ship. But the air was heavy, thick with something unseen. He set her down carefully against the wall. Crouching beside her, just for a moment, he whispered, "I need to check ahead." Her hand shot out weakly, grabbing his sleeve. The fear in her eyes was clear. She didn't want him to leave. He nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "All right, together then." They moved slowly into the chamber. Strange symbols glowed faintly across the floor. Pulsing like a heartbeat, the girl's gaze darted to them. Her body tense, the doctor could tell she recognized them, but whether with fear or sorrow, he couldn't tell. He crouched, brushing his fingers over the glowing marks. They were warm, humming softly, almost like veins carrying energy. Then the whisper returned, louder this time. It wasn't just sound, it was pressure, sinking into his skull. He winced, clutching his head, his vision blurring for a second. The girl whimpered softly, curling against the wall. Her glowing patterns pulsed erratically. Responding to the sound, the doctor forced himself to stand. "No," he growled, shaking his head. He looked around the chamber, his eyes narrowing. "Who's there?" Silence. Then, faintly, the lights flickered again. The symbols on the floor brightened. Pulsing faster, the girl's breathing grew rapid, her hands gripping her chest. The doctor rushed to her side, pulling her close. "It's all right, I've got you." The whisper faded slowly, leaving only silence again. But the warning was clear. Whatever had been keeping her here wasn't gone. It was watching, waiting. The doctor held her tighter, staring into the shadows. He didn't know what they were facing. But one thing was certain: freeing her was only the beginning. She was not just disabled. She was not just abandoned. She was carrying secrets far bigger than either of them. And now, he was part of them too. The chamber was still. The strange glow on the floor had dimmed again, leaving only the faint flicker of overhead lights. The doctor sat with his back against the wall, the alien girl resting weakly beside him. His arms supported her so she would not fall. Her breathing was shallow but steadier now, each rise and fall of her chest reminding him that she was still here, still alive. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Silence filled the air, heavy but not empty. It was the kind of silence that comes after a storm, fragile and uncertain. The doctor's eyes wandered over her features, up close. She looked even more otherworldly, her smooth glowing skin, her delicate patterns of light, her eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies when they opened. She was unlike anything he had ever seen, yet something about her felt painfully familiar. Her hand twitched against his arm, weak but deliberate. He looked down. Slowly, she turned her head toward him. Their eyes met again, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to stop. There was no ship, no danger, no shadows watching from the corners, only her, fragile but alive, and him, the stranger who had chosen to stay. She made a sound, soft, uncertain, not a word, but almost like a question. He shook his head gently. "I don't understand you," he admitted, his voice quiet, almost apologetic. "But I think I know what you mean." Her lips curved faintly, not quite a smile, but something close. The smallest flicker of hope. The doctor's chest tightened. He had seen countless patients, human and otherwise, but never had he felt this kind of connection. It was more than duty, more than instinct. It was as if some invisible thread had pulled them together, tying their fates into one. The girl closed her eyes briefly, her head leaning against his shoulder. The warmth of her glowing skin pressed softly through his suit. He froze at first, unsure if he should move, then slowly relaxed. If this gave her comfort, he would let her rest. Minutes passed. The ship groaned now and then, but the whispers were gone. For the first time since he had entered, there was calm. In that fragile peace, he found himself whispering thoughts he had not spoken aloud in years. "I don't know who you are," he said quietly. "I don't even know if I can save you. But I promise I'll try. You're not alone anymore." Her breathing shifted slightly, a soft sigh escaping as if she understood. He felt her fingers move again, brushing lightly against his wrist, weak, trembling, but purposeful. She was answering him without words. He stayed like that, letting her draw strength from the closeness. His mind wandered, painting questions he had no answers for. Why had she been left behind? Who had built the cruel machine that drained her life? And why did he feel, so strongly, that her fate mattered more than his own? The girl stirred after a while, her eyes opening again. She looked up at him, studying his face carefully. Then, with a sudden effort, she raised her hand and touched his cheek. Her skin was cool, glowing faintly against his warmth. He inhaled sharply, caught off guard, but he did not move away. Her touch lingered for a moment, soft but filled with meaning. She was trying to speak without words. "Thank you," he whispered, though he knew she hadn't said it. Somehow, it felt right. Her hand dropped again, too weak to hold itself up, but the message had been sent, and he had received it. The silence deepened once more, but it was no longer heavy. It was different now, gentle, almost comforting. The bond between them had grown. Fragile, yes, but real. He leaned back against the wall, keeping her close. "We'll get through this," he said softly, "no matter what comes." The girl's eyes fluttered closed again, exhaustion pulling her under. But the faintest trace of peace lingered on her face. She was no longer just a prisoner, no longer just abandoned. She was with someone who cared. The doctor let out a slow breath, his body finally easing its tension. For the first time since stepping into the ship, he felt he could rest, even if just for a moment. But deep down, he knew the danger wasn't gone. The whispers had fallen silent. But silence could be worse. Silence meant waiting, watching, planning. He tightened his grip gently around her, his eyes scanning the dim chamber once more. The shadows hadn't moved, but he didn't trust them, not yet. Still, when he looked down at the girl in his arms, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt resolve. Whatever this place was hiding, whatever enemies lingered beyond the walls, they would not take her again. She had been abandoned once, but not anymore. He would not let her fall back into darkness. The doctor's eyes narrowed, determination burning behind them. "Not while I'm here," he whispered to himself, and somewhere in the silence of the ship, as if hearing his vow, the metal walls groaned softly in reply. The peace did not last. The doctor felt it first in his chest, like a pressure pressing down on the air around them. The chamber seemed smaller, darker, as if something unseen had awakened. The alien girl stirred weakly against him, her glowing eyes opening halfway, filled with fear. She could feel it. The floor trembled under his boots. A deep metallic rumble echoed through the ship, stronger than before. The walls shivered, thus falling from the ceiling in thin streams. He held her tighter, steadying her fragile body. "Stay calm," he whispered, though his own voice shook. A sudden noise cracked through the silence. A sharp screech, metal tearing against metal, like claws dragging along the hull. The sound came from the corridor they had left behind. It was moving closer. The girl's hand clutched his sleeve, trembling. Her glowing patterns pulsed erratically, flashing like signals in the dark. He didn't understand her language, but he understood this. Whatever was coming was dangerous. He rose quickly, lifting her into his arms again. She was light to light, and every movement made her gasp softly in pain. But leaving her behind was not an option. He stepped into the corridor beyond the chamber, his heart hammering. The lights flickered violently, the shadows twisted along, the walls stretching unnaturally. Then, for just a moment, he saw something tall, dark, and shifting at the far end of the hall. Its form was not solid, as if made from smoke and metal. Red sparks glowed faintly where its eyes should have been. The doctor froze. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to move. The thing did not step closer, yet its presence filled the corridor. The air grew colder, pressing against his skin like ice. The alien girl whimpered softly against his chest, her hand weakly pressing against him as if to warn him. He forced himself to move again, one slow step, then another. Away from the shadow, the screech came again, louder this time, vibrating through the walls. The lights above shattered, plunging the corridor into near darkness. Only the faint glow from the girl's body lit the way forward. The doctor clutched her tightly and ran. His boots pounded against the metal floor, echoing in the endless hall. The shadow followed, its form twisting unnaturally, sliding along the walls like liquid darkness. He didn't look back again. He couldn't. His focus was on the girl in his arms, her fragile body pressed against his chest. Her breathing was shallow, but she was awake, her glowing eyes watching the darkness behind them. They turned a corner sharply, entering another section of the ship. Here the walls were lined with strange glass panels, cracked and flickering with faint images. The doctor didn't understand them, but the girl's gaze darted to the panels quickly. Her patterns glowed brighter, almost in response. "Do you know this place?" he asked, his voice breathless. She weakly raised a hand, pointing toward a door at the far end of the hall. The meaning was clear. Safety lay beyond. The shadow screeched again, closer now, filling the air with vibrations that made his bones ache. He sprinted, every muscle screaming, every step a battle against the weight of fear pressing down on him. At last, he reached the door. It resisted his touch, locked by alien symbols glowing faintly across its surface. He cursed under his breath. Looking back, the shadow was rounding the corner, its red sparks burning brighter. The girl raised her hand again, her fingers glowing faintly. She touched one of the symbols on the door. For a moment nothing happened. Then the symbols pulsed, and the door slid open with a hiss. The doctor rushed inside, the door sealing behind them just as the shadow lunged forward. A deafening screech shook the walls, then silence. His chest heaved with exhaustion. He lowered the girl carefully to the floor, his hands trembling. Her breathing was rapid, but she was alive. She looked at him with tired eyes, and he could see the gratitude there. He sat beside her, his back against the wall, trying to steady his breath. "What was that thing?" he whispered, more to himself than to her. She didn't answer, but the fear in her eyes was enough. Whatever it was, it had been guarding her, and now it would not stop until it had her back. The doctor clenched his fists. He was no soldier, no fighter. He had never faced monsters or shadows, but as he looked at her, fragile and broken yet still alive, something inside him hardened. He could not fight the darkness with weapons, but he could fight it with will. He could stand between her and the things that hunted her. He reached for her hand again, holding it gently, her glowing fingers curled weakly round his. The bond between them was stronger now, forged in fear and survival. "We'll make it," he whispered. "I don't care what comes. I'll keep you safe." The girl closed her eyes, leaning weakly against him. For the first time, he felt not just her trust, but her faith. The silence returned. But it was no longer empty. It was the silence before. Another storm, a storm that would test them both. The doctor knew the shadow would return. And when it did, he would be ready, not because he had the strength, but because he had something stronger to fight for. The silence could not last forever. The doctor sat against the wall, the alien girl resting weakly against his chest. Her glowing skin cast faint light across the room, painting the walls in soft blue patterns. Her breathing had steadied, but exhaustion still clung to her fragile body. She was alive, but barely. He knew the shadow would not stop. Whatever force had bound her to that cruel chair, whatever darkness haunted this ship, it wanted her back, and now it knew he had taken her. Away. The floor trembled. The walls groaned. The shadow had returned. The girl stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked up at him, fear shining in her glowing gaze. He brushed a strand of glowing hair from her face, whispering softly, "I'm here. I won't let it take you." Her hand moved weakly, gripping his sleeve as if to hold him in place. She made a sound soft, broken, but he caught the meaning. She was begging him not to leave. The doctor's chest tightened. He had no weapons, no armor, no plan, only his resolve. But sometimes that was enough. The door rattled violently, red sparks seeping through the cracks. The shadow screeched, a deafening cry that shook the walls. The girl whimpered, curling closer to him. He wrapped his arms around her, shielding her fragile frame as best he could. Then the door burst open. The shadow poured into the room like liquid darkness, its form twisting, taller than the ceiling, its red sparks burning like eyes. The air grew freezing, pressing down on his chest, stealing his breath. The doctor stood. His knees trembled, his body screamed at him to run. But he planted himself between the girl and the approaching darkness. His hands shook, but his voice came steady. "You can't have her." The shadow moved closer, tendrils of smoke like metal stretching toward them. The girl cried out weakly, her glowing patterns flashing erratically. She reached toward him, her fragile fingers brushing his arm. In that touch, he felt it, her fear, her pain, but also her trust. Something shifted inside him. He wasn't just a doctor anymore. He wasn't just a man who had stumbled into a mystery. He was her only shield, her last chance. The shadow lunged. He held his ground. The force slammed into him, cold and suffocating, throwing him back against the wall. Pain shot through his body, but he refused to fall. He pushed himself forward again, arms spread wide, blocking the girl from view. "Not while I'm here," he growled, his voice echoing against the walls. The shadow shrieked, its form writhing violently. It struck again, harder, slamming him into the ground, his vision blurred, his body screaming in agony. Still, he forced himself back to his feet. He would not give in. Behind him, the girl's glow brightened suddenly. Her patterns pulsed wildly, light surging through her body. She raised her trembling hand, her eyes locking onto his. For a moment, he saw the strength hidden beneath her fragile frame. The shadow lunged again, but this time the girl's light flared, blasting through the room. The force struck the darkness, making it reel back with an ear-splitting shriek. The doctor shielded his eyes, but he felt her hand gripping his tightly, grounding him in the storm of light. The shadow thrashed, its form breaking apart under the brilliance. Piece by piece, it dissolved, the red sparks fading into nothing. With one final scream, it vanished into the air, leaving only silence behind. The light dimmed slowly. The girl collapsed against him, her body trembling, her strength spent. He caught her carefully, lowering her to the floor. Her breathing was weak but steady. She looked up at him, her glowing eyes softer now, filled not with fear but with relief. He brushed her cheek gently, whispering, "You did it. You're safe now." Her lips moved, forming a sound. It wasn't his language, but he understood. It was his name, spoken in her broken voice. His throat tightened. "I'm here," he said, holding her hand. For a long moment, they stayed like that, to beings from different worlds, bound by something greater than fear. The ship groaned softly, as if releasing its final breath. The danger had passed. The shadows were gone. Only silence remained. The doctor sat back against the wall, the girl resting in his arms. She was still weak, still broken in ways he could not fully heal, but she was alive. And more than that, she was no longer alone. He looked down at her, his chest heavy with exhaustion but warm with something deeper. He had come here as a stranger, answering a call he didn't understand. Now, he couldn't imagine leaving her side. Her eyes closed slowly, but not in fear. She was resting now, safe in his arms. A faint smile lingered on her lips, small but real. The doctor leaned his head back, closing his own eyes. For the first time, he let himself believe it. They had survived. And though the future was uncertain, one truth burned clear in his heart. No one else could have saved her. No one else had stayed. But he had, and in saving her, He had found something he never expected: love beyond worlds.